Hey guys, and welcome back to Four Tires and Fuel. I'm Ashton Register, and Cole couldn't be with us this episode, but we have a special guest, Ike Everard, who's also on Blaze Radio with his NASCAR podcast called The Restart Zone.
Yeah, it's good to be here. I'm glad that I could come help out.
So last week we didn't have a podcast, so we're going to have to do 2 green flag restarts. So the first one would be for the Auto Club 400, which was in Fontana 2 weeks ago. Kyle Busch actually got his 200th win. To get into a little more into that later on. And we saw that Team Penske and Joe Gibbs dominated again. Do you think Team Penske and Joe Gibbs are going to keep dominating throughout the season so far?
Yeah, I think they will. I think that we've seen them grow a lot as a team over the past couple years, and I don't really see that stopping. You know, I think Stuart Haas kind of took over a bit last year, but with this new package, Joe Gibbs has really figured out how to take advantage of it and be really fast.
And like we said, Kyle Busch got his 200th win. How did your feelings going from Phoenix with 199 to even the next week and just getting 200, and he wanted to get it in the Cup Series, and I feel like that was a great accomplishment for Kyle Busch. Do you expect him to hit 250 or just
Yeah. Well, I think he'll definitely hit 250. I think that the rate that he's going at is insane. And we saw him, he almost won the truck race at Fontana, and he didn't, which I think he's probably happy about secretly because, like you said, obviously great to get it in the Cup Series. And it would have been cool to be there for his 200th win if it had come a week earlier. But, yeah, it's crazy that he got him in consecutive weeks. Just the dominance that he's shown has been incredible.
And now for the other green flag, we'll recap Martinsville for the STP 500. Joey Logano actually started on the pole for this. But there's new rules applied because of Fontana issues that we didn't touch on last episode. So basically, with qualifying in Fontana, in the final round, none of the cars made a lap. And NASCAR wasn't too happy with that, so they implied new rules for Texas coming up. And if you fail to make a lap, then all your other times are disallowed. You can't block pit road. And the big one, which is kind of weirding, is they're going to stage you and put your car in a specific area. And once you leave that area, you have to start your lap. Do you think that's going to make qualifying more interesting? We've already seen qualifying super interesting already this season, but do you think they needed these rules?
I mean, I thought it was pretty interesting to see all the cars stopped on pit road. That was one of the funniest things I've ever seen in NASCAR, but I do think they need it because obviously that's not sustainable for qualifying. I kind of think they should go back to single car runs just because the draft is such a big thing with the new package, but I don't think they're going to do that, and so this is a good compromise.
For Fontana, my only issue is what if none of the cars make a round? Then they're all disallowed. Then
they all
who
go
wins
to the back?
who wins the poll at that point? And I don't know how the staging is going to work because I feel like crew chiefs are going to have issues where their car is and they're going to have to get more on to pit road or less off of pit road, and I don't know how they're going to pull or pick where they're starting.
Yeah, people are going to be mad, I think. It's not going to be a smooth process, but it's what NASCAR signed up for when they decided to switch it from the tried and true formula. So they're going to have to deal with that outcome. I think it would be interesting if no cars complete a lap.
Yeah, they're going to have to make another rule on top of the rule that they already made about this rule.
Yeah, it's going to be real strange, but, you know, it's a learning process. I think it's a growing process for the sport, so we'll see how it ends up.
And basically throughout Martinsville, Brad Keselowski basically dominated the entire race, leading 446 laps, winning both stages. They actually said throughout the race that the last time Brad won both stages, Kyle Busch actually won that race. So we were kind of expecting maybe Kyle Busch. He did finish third. But the surprise of the weekend, in a sense, was Chase Elliott and Hendrick Motorsports. Hendrick Motorsports has kind of had a rough start to this season, and Chase Elliott did finish second, and he was the only car that actually passed Brad during the race. Do you think Hendrick Motorsports is going to be moving up from this point?
I hope so. I'm a big Hendrick fan, and Chase has been really good at Martinsville throughout his career, so I think that a lot of people expected him to be fast this past weekend. And, you know, the fact that he was able to pass Brad, obviously the technical aspects of his car were working very well, which we haven't seen from Hendrick's Motorsports so far. Jimmy Johnson did well at Phoenix, but other than that, yeah, it's really this Chase Elliott run that they can hang their hats on. So I hope that we see him pick it up. I hope it's not just an element of the track, you know, being good for Elliott. But, yeah, I think they will because it's interesting with the West Coast swing. They can't really go back to the shop and work on the cars in between those 3 races. So whatever they learned from those 3 races, they have to implement now for Martinsville and going forward, which it seems like they did, and hopefully that will continue.
It seems like Chase Elliott did. I feel like William Byron it's still working with track analysis. I don't think it's fitting completely, and I don't think Alex Bowman, as like we said before on their show, he's living up to such a high expectation in the 88 car. So it's going to be interesting, but I do see a win for Chase Elliott coming in the future talking about this season.
Definitely.
Another thing was wrecks weren't really this big in this race. There wasn't that many cautions or notable drivers that had any big wrecks. But like we said, the big one was Brad getting his second win of the season and just Team Penske dominating with Joe Gibbs. Do you see, like we talked about earlier with Fontana, do you think Team Penske is going to win a championship this season again, or Joe Gibbs, or Black Horse is just going to come up, or is just going to keep going with Penske?
I mean, obviously, if I was going to bet, I would say Gibbs just because they have 4 cars and they have such a stacked lineup. But Team Penske's shown a lot of speed. Is this their first year as a 3-car team or second? This is their second year, right?
Second, yeah.
So they've had some time to grow into that bigger size. And I think that we could definitely see Kez win it. Penske could definitely repeat. I don't think Logano will win it again, but yeah, I think that Penske could win it with Kez. I think that Blaney could pop out of nowhere in the later half of the season too.
I think Blaney's going to get a win. He's being very consistent in the top 10, and you really can't beat Kyle Busch and Joe Gibbs or Team Penske, but maybe later on this season when we see road courses and going back to other races already, I think we're going to see some changes throughout the season. Your top 10 for STP 500 was winner Brad Keselowski, Chase Elliott finished second, Kyle Busch finished third, Ryan Blaney finished fourth, Denny Hamlin finished fifth, Kevin Harvick was 6, Clint Bowyer was 7, Mark Truex was 8, Eric Almirola was 9, and Daniel Suarez was 10. Is there any name that stands out to you that finished in the top 10?
I mean, obviously we talked about Ryan Blaney, so seeing him in the top 5 is always good. But Daniel Suarez at 10, he's the guy who kind of got demoted. He got kicked out of the 19, and he's in the 41 now, which was fast with Kurt Busch last year. And I think that Suarez is getting adjusted to that team, and he's a really talented young driver. So he has the opportunity to take that ride and really make the most of it, and I think he's starting to do that now.
I think Martin Truex Jr. has not struggled. He's been very consistent in the top 10. He just can't click a win yet in his new car in the 19. But I think once we get to Texas and other tracks, I think he's going to start being, like we said, more consistent, and I think a win's coming for him too because he has the gear. He won with the 77 car. Yeah. He can win with the 19. We just don't know when it's going to click. And Clint Bowyer too, in a top 10 finish is really good for him too, and totally. Eric Almirola.
Yeah, I mean, Bowyer won last year at Martinsville, I think, and yeah, it would have been cool. I love seeing Bowyer win. He's such a funny guy. Mm-hmm. But speaking about Truex too, I think it must be such a big adjustment to go from a team where you're the only car, and especially for Cole Pearn, who's such a good crew chief, to now have to work with 3 other crew chiefs. And, you know, you're not necessarily the top of the ladder because obviously Kyle Busch is there. Hamlin has seniority. So, yeah, I think that's a struggle for them, but they'll adjust.
Yeah, they're a power couple, basically, to put in. But other big news that shocked basically the NASCAR world was the 2020 season changes that are coming up for next year. And the one that was the most notable was the Phoenix is getting the championship race now. Bristol's moving to September, which is the opening round of the playoffs. Daytona's moving to right before the Chase as a cutoff race. Pocono doubleheader. Don't know how that one's going to go. Darlington opens the playoffs. Miami's in March now. And the West is right after Daytona. Which one is your favorite out of those?
Well, you know, I got to say my favorite is Phoenix with the championship race. Obviously, we're here. We're going to get to cover that, which is such a cool opportunity. That's going to be really fun. But I think just from a racing standpoint, my favorite is that Bristol's in the playoffs now. There's 4 short tracks in the playoffs and a Roval and a super speedway, which means there's only going to be 4.5-mile tracks in the playoffs, which I think is a really positive direction for the sport to move into. My least favorite, though, I think has to be Miami in March. There's always been great racing there, and it's going to be nice to spruce up the front end of the schedule with that. But, yeah, it's disappointing for a great track to move into a less prime position.
I have to agree with you. Phoenix having the championship race now, they built up ISM Raceway to be where fans get to engage, and I think Phoenix now is the place for a championship race. I also like Pocono doubleheader. I don't know how we've never seen back-to-back races and that's going to change. Like, one race might this work and another race might this work. So they're going to have to make changes throughout the same week. But my least favorite, just being from Florida, is Daytona moving to right before the Chase as a cutoff race. Going to the July race was always, like, a tradition for my family. But I also think it's going to be interesting because we also say Daytona's like a crapshoot. Anyone can win. So maybe, like, a smaller name can win in basically August and get into the playoffs and kick someone out with points, which I think is going to be interesting to see also.
Yeah, I mean, Daytona, obviously the Firecracker 400, that's like you said, a tradition, but it is going to be crazy to see that right before the playoffs start. And what do you think? They moved Indy to 4th of July now, so
yeah.
It's never been a great track for NASCAR, but, it's still Indianapolis, so...
True, and some people can get wins there, even if they have 102. Okay.
Yeah, it's gonna be a nice place for the 4th of July parties though. Big infield, probably some fireworks. Should be a good time.
But going back to Daytona, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. probably is loving that right now,
I'm
just
sure,
because.
Yeah.
And moving into Phoenix, Kevin Harvick and Kyle Busch are probably like celebrating off the wall, like they're probably because they dominate that racetrack. So if they're already in the playoffs, they're like.
That could be a really, I know people are going to hate if it's only 2 cars like that, but that could be a really cool battle between them for a championship in 2020.
And it's not a big of a change, but the West swing is going to be right after Daytona without Atlanta moving back. So I don't know. That might not cause as many issues because it's still going to be the same, but it might change up a little bit because, like, we saw Kevin Harvick last year just dominate the West swing, so that might change, like, the outlook on the 2020 season. But we really can't predict anything or see how it works until it actually happens.
Yeah, that I think we've learned with the new aero package and everything. For sure, you gotta wait and see. Wasn't there snow at Atlanta like the week before the race this year?
I think so.
Yeah,
so maybe we'll see like
I think
something
it makes
like
sense to move that
different.
back.
Yeah. But it's gonna be maybe more people are gonna go to the races. We don't know. We've seen like viewership decline, so maybe this can help viewership get back, or it's gonna cause a lot more issues that no one knows until it happens. But I think NASCAR did a really good job changing it up. I think the drivers wanted something new, and I saw like Jimmy Johnson like even tweeted was like, to whom this may concern, thank you. So I think they're gonna be interested in something new because like veterans like Jimmy Johnson, they've just known the same thing, and then they changed up the chase, and then I think they liked that, so now changing it up even more, I think.
Yeah, no, I'm super excited to see it, especially that doubleheader.
Okay, now on to Texas for the white flag. Last spring race, Kyle Busch won the spring in Texas, and he dominated pretty much the entire season already. Do we see this continuing in him winning in Texas also?
I don't see why not. I mean, he's been fast, and until he proves he's not going to be fast, I think he's the odds-on favorite to win every race.
I hope that maybe Hendrick Motorsports or another car can maybe get in, but we never can count Kyle Busch out at this race. Do we think it's going to be dominated by a single car? Because the past stats have shown that it hasn't been. Mm-hmm. Do we think it's going to finally change in Texas? Because Texas is a bigger track than Martinsville, or that Kyle Busch is just going to dominate again?
I think that we will see it be dominated. I think that the aero package leaves a lot of room for one team to just find a setup that works and run with it. Now, Texas, I don't think it's been known for the greatest of races over the past couple of years. So hopefully that will change, and we'll see a little mixing up at the front. But I do think we'll see it dominated by the eventual winner. I don't think that that's the trend that's going to change in the near future.
Do we think there's going to be more crashes? Because I know a lot of people watch NASCAR for the crashes, and this season really hasn't produced that many crashes other than Daytona, of course.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you think about the slower speeds with the package, right? And it's a lot more maneuverable for the cars, so I think that's what's cut down the crashes for the most part. Texas is a bigger track than we've gone to. Obviously, Auto Club's big, but Texas, I think, is conducive to crashing, so this is going to be a good test to see if crashing really has a place in NASCAR anymore, and if it will happen at a non-super speedway.
And, like, how bad the crashes will be, like, what extent, like, one car, because you just see one cars, but no offense, they're, like, the little, like, small, like, own cars that, like, always have issues, but we really haven't seen any big names just, like, have DNFs finish as races yet, but, like, that can be good in their cases because they're saving money from not having the wrecked cars, basically.
I think the owners are certainly happy, and they're trying to cut down the costs of ownership so more people can get into it, which less crashes would certainly help that.
Do we think there's going to be a dark horse contender like Chase Elliott was last race? Do we think someone's going to come up through Texas and possibly give Kyle Busch or Kevin Harvick, who won the fall race, a run for their money?
I think Ryan Blaney's going to come up. I think he obviously has the Penske speed. He did well last week. And I feel like Texas is a track that really suits him. So I think that Blaney's going to put up a challenge for the win this week.
We are now going to give our picks for the O'Reilly Auto Parts 500. So who's your choice for this weekend?
That's a hard one because I want to go with somebody who's not Kyle Busch, but I think I got to go with Kyle Busch.
I think I'm going to choose Jimmy Johnson, and this may
Wow.
sound like a wild one because we haven't seen him do well recently, and really only in Phoenix he had like an up with the top 10, but just he's dominated Texas stat-wise and win-wise, and I'm hoping that either he gets a top 10 or he gets a win in Texas, just because I think he needs that confidence booster. I know being a veteran and people telling him to retire already, I think he needs a good run in Texas to have that confidence builder going into the other races.
Yeah, I'd love to see it. I don't know how
I don't know.
realistic it is,
Kyle
but
Busch, yeah, it's probably not
yeah.
realistic. Last time I chose Kyle Busch, he didn't win to the next race, so maybe. But that's why I'm like, we'll choose Jimmy Johnson.
Yeah,
and
why
we'll
not?
see. Or Martin Truex Jr. I think Martin Truex
Okay.
Jr. could come up as like a dark horse in
Yeah.
Texas.
Weird to say that he would be a dark horse, but yeah, I think you're definitely right about that.
Yeah, it is weird
Yeah.
to say being like a championship, but just
Right.
what we've seen already, just dominated by Kyle and Brad and even Joey. I feel like Martin Truex Jr. is more of like a dark horse at this point, which is kind of sad even about Jimmy Johnson, because Jimmy Johnson
Yeah.
used to dominate
I
and
know.
is an 8-time champion and won
The
6
times
times
are
in a row.
changing,
Yeah. So I think, well, back to championship, I think maybe Kyle Busch could win a championship this season also.
Yeah, I think he's got to be the favorite right now, but I don't know if he'll be able to hold on because I feel like usually the guys who are really good at the start of the season kind of peter out by the end of the year. Who knows if Kyle will do that, but I think it'll be somebody more like Logano last year where he kind of sneaks his way in, finds speed at the right time, which is really how the playoffs are set up.
But then for next year, the playoffs might not be set up
Yeah.
like that, so we don't really know. So
Next
maybe
year
this is
is
like,
gonna be-
yeah.
Because they have the Roval as a cutoff race,
Mhm.
they have Martinsville as a cutoff race. Yeah, it's going to be crazy.
Check out the O'Reilly Auto Part 500 on March 31st at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, so that's noon Pacific Time. Thank you, Ike, for joining us today on this episode of 4 Tires and Fuel. I'm Ashton Register, and have a great day.